It's the weekly 30/30 trading list. We're finding the best momentum companies on the ASX, and we're identifying those companies that are set to run. We're doing this with Gary Glover from Novus Capital, who has been through the list and pulled out his favourite charts to explain to us where the main points are. Good morning, Gary. How are you?
I'm great, Chris. Great.
I'm excited to follow up because you've been 100% invested or close to for some time. So clearly there's opportunity in the market. How'd you find this week's list?
I found it really interesting actually this week, just because of where we are in the market cycle. Now, history tells us that the leaders of yesterday or yesteryear, however we want to sort of frame them, will not be the new leaders of the future. And so particularly when we've gone through a bear market, which we obviously clearly have, then the next bullish phase, there should be a new leadership group emerge. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to basically look at who's the strongest on the board from a quarterly perspective, who's the strongest on the board from a short-term weekly perspective. And it's really interesting. That's what history tells us. And the whole principle of what you and I are looking at here is based on that premise, is we're trying to look at the strongest stocks quarterly and weekly and trade those. And it's funny, what history tells us is playing out right now, right in front of our eyes, particularly this last 2 weeks. If you look at the NASDAQ and all the FANG stocks, those are yesterday's leaders. So they're the strongest stocks on the board in the previous bull cycle. And what's happening to them at the moment is that the market's obviously found a bit of a low here, had a bit of a bounce. And believe it or not, that the NASDAQ is actually tracking equal 52-week long, 52-week highs and lows at the moment, as in what stocks that are making 52-week highs and those making 52-week lows.
So the constituents within the NASDAQ, you've got the equal number that are hitting the yearly highs as the same number of companies hitting yearly lows. Is that what it is?
Exactly right. That's exactly right. And then we saw the other day, I think we're looking at, this is actually before Meta reported last night. I'm not sure. I was trying to find this this tweet there, but literally I was looking at the FANG stocks there. Again, this is before Meta. All of them are down sort of 15 to 20%, except for Meta, which is now down 15 to 20%, and the S&P at that stage was only down like 0.5% over the same time period. So the 500, the index is actually holding up pretty well, but yesterday's leaders are not. So the inexperienced trader here, or oftentimes the big mistake that retail not just retail, sometimes institutional traders make the same mistake, is that they end up buying the leaders from the past and yesterday's sort of leaders, and that history tells us that they aren't going to lead the next bull market. So we need to be doing this exercise, what we're doing here today, looking through stronger stocks on the board and looking for the new leadership. So there should be new companies, new IPOs, new companies that will lead us out here. And the leaders of the past, they're not going to lead. And you can see this is happening right in front of our eyes. It's so clear this last couple of weeks. That's exactly what's occurring here. And that's exactly why this is so important, what we're doing here, Chris. So this is what we need to be looking at. We need to be looking at the strongest stocks here, identifying those early, and all those sort of stocks. If you look at, if we look at stage analysis, Stan Weinstein sort of stuff, all those sort of stocks that have been falling away here, they've been in stage 4 declines for quite some period of time now. You should not be long Meta and Alphabet and Google. Those stocks are all trending down. They're all below the 50-day moving average. They're all, they're moving a lot lower here. What's that? I just had the Meta chart here. Look at that downtrend. You should not be long that stock. So
yeah, that hasn't stopped falling. That's the falling piano scenario, isn't it?
Yeah. So might be at a value point here, right? Now, but you shouldn't be that stock's been trending down here. So that's why we've got to be following the leaders here. So just thought I'd make that point here because I think it's just fascinating that history, everything with momentum stocks there, it's all what we've been taught, what all the textbooks tell us, is exactly playing out right now. And it's exactly why we need to be focusing on leadership groups here in the market. So GWA was number one, probably wouldn't be my number one here. Obviously, just our measures, maybe looking at the last lows there. Number two there is Cettire, which has had a pretty impressive move there. This is pretty interesting. If you go, obviously, we talked about this being a little VCP there the last couple of weeks, sort of like this pullback here, second one, third one there, and then breaking out of this little B wave there. That would have been our trigger day there. So popped up there. Once it got out of the range, what did it do? Pull back, set on top of the previous high, and it's gone again. Nice sort of volume there. Starting to slow down a little bit here, so might get another pause there, but again, this is just, we're looking for the stronger stocks here, looking for momentum, looking for those little pauses, looking for those VCPs to sort of set up and trade there. Thought Elmo Software is pretty interesting, because obviously this is one that we did feature the last few weeks, just because it had sort of gapped up on some takeover talk, and now it's been bidded up here, so a bit hard to trade there, but it is pretty positive. Another one actually like Elmo is actually NTO. Nitro, which is not on the list here, but that's showing sort of similar.
It has been for a couple of weeks. It was.
Yeah, it's a similar sort of company as well. So that's just gone to a new high here, Chris. So pretty interesting. So just breaking out here. So this is Davis. Davis would be seeing this sort of stock going to this would be a 6-month high here for the stock here, showing a bit of relative strength there. So just interesting that sort of Elmo and Nitro pretty similar, so do like those. CAU pretty strong, has had a decent move here now. Probably looking for a bit more of a pause there. I think Syrah, pretty hard to trade this one. They only had that one little pullback into this zone here, and then went straight up again. Had a the bullish move was obviously going through what was probably a big gap up here, so it would have been hard to trade that one. So not the easiest sort of follow there. NVX is actually one that we spoke about a couple of weeks, or might have a week ago, just because it sort of did broke above. This is a pretty mean downtrend. So, even buying the most beat up stocks here, you'd be looking for it first to break a swing high there, which is what, 202. So we did break here 202. This would be the first time you'd even look at you might even I would be going cautiously, probably entering small here. Got a bit of a snap back here, and we've gone up here again, but some pretty good volume into the highs there. And then we've started to cross bit of volume there. Probably want to sort of see this dry up here, but this is definitely one to keep an eye on. Just obviously got obviously that sector, he's on fire there. Obviously got got awarded some money sort of out of the Biden camp there with their project there, so it sort of makes them look pretty interesting. Quite a few lithium stocks on the list there, but hard to sort of buy them when they sort of gap up, things like that. One that I thought was PIE's had a pretty nice run again. A little hard to, no real sort of pullback or no sort of tightening pattern there. PNV is sort of one that I've traded there. I actually remember this for a client or two here in the last day, just because it's sort of going up on pretty light volume there. So just looks running out of puff here. 360 was sort of one that we spoke about, how this was sort of, again, it's VCP going sideways in this move here, and a little congestion there and a little bit of break here. This probably would have chopped me out here, just because that big sort of gap through there. So I'd like to run sort of stops. I like to run stops in the market, so I would have been stopped out if I was trading this one here personally, but I wasn't. I was long other things, but this is interesting sort of setup here, but still not too bad here yet. Still showing a bit of relative strength. I think Liontown was interesting one again. I said lithium stocks there. So you had this little bit of a pullback, a little bit of a pause in here, and then I did see this. I just didn't think it would actually run as hard, But that, again, this is sort of why we want to trade the leading stock, because they tend to surprise us on the upside. One stock I did sort of see in here was actually Praemium there, which was a bit of a surprise here. So again, we've got this pullback in here, little second pullback is sort of like medium pullback, and then we've got this little tight, so look how tight in here, and then we got a breakout here. So literally once we've sort of got a little VCP in there, a nice little break on there. Not a bad little
So
signal actually.
Would you be buying that on the break or in the coil where the volatility contracts?
Well,
What's the buy for you?
Yeah, so this is the VCP is obviously you get the pullback here. This is your first pullback. Your second pullback is smaller, and your third pullback is nice and tight here. So once you sort of start to see your second or third pullback there, you want to be breaking above this high here, which it did, and then the third pullback here. This is nice and tightened up here, and really you're looking. I mean, this is the classic VCP is to break above that mark there. So once it's gone above 73.5 cents, that would be your trigger there, and that little VCP. So you want to sort of see it. And that was obviously, I think we saw some good volume the day before, probably the best volume day. So they give you a bit of a clue as to which way this is going to go. And obviously went straight up here. So I just thought that was a good little VCP pattern there. What else? There was a WBT I thought was pretty interesting. This is sort of Weebit. So now this had a nice move here. So it looks kind of bullish here, doesn't it? So, but look at the volume. The volume's a lot bigger here. So sometimes you think, oh, that volume is really good. It's actually kicked up on big volume here. But sometimes these big volume bars, they can be exhaustive. So that volume bar there, or that volume bar there, or that volume bar there. It's a high. Volume bar here was the high.
So they're at the tops.
Oh, yeah. So sometimes on these sort of more lightly traded sort of stocks, the big volume bars can be exhaustive sort of signals. Okay, so that's why you got to be careful sometimes. So there's a bit of Wyckoff theory in here, but yeah, you just have to sort of look at what's how the stock behaves, what sort of volume goes through there. But these sort of smaller stocks there, sometimes those big volume days like that can be exhaustive in nature there. So that's one I'd be a little careful of there, just for that reason there. PLS has been pretty strong as well. The only thing going on here, Chris, is this has been a really strong trend all the way through from June, July, August, September, and then late September there we had a correction there. And this is the biggest correction of the move. Gone to a new high again, had a bigger correction now, and gone to a new high again. So this thing's like overlapping here. So this is basically sort of what the textbook was sort of preferred, like a broadening sort of broadening top sort of pattern there. And why it's got a broadening top is that these corrections are the largest of the move, so they're kind of like overbalancing the trend, and also they're overlapping in nature as well. So just got to be careful with PLS here. Obviously, I know there's a strong sector here, but two things you don't like to see is you don't like to see the biggest correction come in, because the thing about volatility, as we know, the greatest volatility comes in one or two places. Comes in either near the lows or comes in near the highs. It doesn't normally come in the middle of trends. So,
some alarm bells.
So alarm bells ringing here just because of this sort of, we've gone at 1, 2, 3 new highs here. Biggest corrections up, overlapping. So what can happen is they can have a breather. They can go sideways for a while. So this thing will either it should go sideways for a while, have a breather, or it might pull back here. That's what sort of that type of pattern normally sort of suggests. I know it's a strong sector there, but for me, I just be careful of that, just because of what of the price, or the nature of the price action there. It's just another one here I thought was pretty interesting was A1, which is an IPO. So this is sort of, I spent a bit of time actually last week going through all the stocks in the last 12 months, all the IPOs in the last 12 months, and looking at the stocks that are showing some relative strength out of those, because sort of some new leaders will emerge here. So this is a new one. So popped up here, look congested, popped up congested. So it's actually sort of congesting in here. So it's sort of one that I'm keeping an eye on there. Could be a VCP in there, but it's probably too early there. But it's definitely a hot sector, and a new company there. So watching it pretty closely. TLX, obviously pharmaceuticals, as we know, has been pretty buoyant. So it's had a bit of a pop. Probably a little too late to be coming in. ADT So again, this is sort of, we've got that sort of, pretty buoyant sector, and has sort of showed some relative strength in here, and sort of see that, this sort of stock has sort of gone up to the high here, pull back, and then pull back again here. Sort of, again, this is sort of like a probably correction 1, maybe correction 2, and then this little, almost a little cup and handle in here, Chris, and then little tight formation and breaking up here. Once we break to a new high, so once we sort of closed above our high there, which was that day, this is basically sort of our Davis box. So think about Nicholas Davis, he would be buying this sort of on a break above this pattern here, because obviously had a few touches there, showing lots of relative strength compared to the whole market, and then going to a new high there. So that's great little signal there. What's that, around 228? Where are we now? We're up to 250 odd here. So yeah, so not a bad little trigger there. So sort of sometimes, this is the key to these momentum stocks here. It's not about buying low and selling high. It's about buying high and selling higher. So we really want to be basically identifying the strongest stocks there. If you get these pauses in the market, these congestion patterns here, you're looking for these corrections to sort of get smaller and tighten up, and then break up here. That's what we've got to be train ourselves to sort of start looking for and getting involved in there. Again, lots of lithium stocks on the list there. Again, a little ABC, and then pop to a new high. Some okay volume in here, but always wary once this is me like a wave 4, and then we've gone to a wave 5 high here. So can go high here, but pretty late stage for me. ICT. This one here is a pretty strong trend, So it looks to us like it's actually getting a bit overdone, doesn't it, Chris? That's obviously had a pretty good move here. So apart from that 1 day down here, what's happened here the last 3 days?
That volume is just dried up.
No one's still, even though this has come off for 3 days here, hasn't sold. There's no volume. No one's selling the stock here.
They're not stopping you out. They're not taking profits.
No.
Yeah.
So we saw some pretty good volume through here. This is the thing. Some of these sort of stocks, though, again, I know we're pretty high here. Looks pretty stretched here. And in previous years, I wouldn't have gone near anything like this. But this momentum, we see this week after week after week. These stocks continue. The stronger stocks here continue to keep going higher. Momentum will last a lot longer than everyone sees. And we can see here there's just no volume really coming in here. No sort of selling in there.
And is that coming out of a VCP base? Because 1, 2, 3, 4 contractions.
Yeah, I thought that I did see that as well. It would be it's a little messy with some of these smaller stocks here, but you can look at these some of these. I'd be looking through some of the. I'm not sure. Like my software program's got a list of sort of stocks that have floated for the last 3 months, a list of stocks that have floated for the last 12 months. I keep a list on my Iris as well. I just make a point of actually adding them in and taking them out, and having a new watch list to sort of follow these new stocks as well. But yeah, nice little VCP in here, nice and tight. Again, you're sort of seeing. So when you see these upward days on good volume, so you're starting to see a bit of a spike in the volume. You see that's what you see is Wyckoff tells us we'll see the volume spike here. Everyone gets involved, and they pull back on no volume. They get involved in volume, and they pull back on pretty light volume, and then they spike on good volume again. And then look at that. No selling in there, and then
just
bang,
dries right up.
What do we go with?
Tight, isn't it?
Yeah. So once we sort of go to a new, going above a close above that day, because we started to see some volume the previous days before that. So that would have been the 22nd of August there. What closed at 15 cents. That would have been a new close there. So that would be our sort of first day here. So again, just using this technique here, some of these sort of new stocks there. So there's a few things I look for in those sort of one little secret, I think, probably underutilized, is when you're looking through some of those IPO stocks, look at how much, look at your shareholder list, and look if you, I don't know if you're my sort of like Iris has got a list of
20.
It's got a list of basically it tells you what the insiders are holding, and also what the top 5 and basically the over 5% shareholders are holding. So you can sort of see whether it's tightly held. So it tells you whether management might own 20% or 40% or 60%. Sometimes it might only be 5 or 10%. So to me, if I see a stock that's only got like 5 or 10% insider holding, that doesn't show commitment to be long the stock. Whereas if you see a new IPO and there's like say 40%, 50% is held by insiders, normally they've got usually like a 2-year minimum sort of holding, which they can't even be, so tells you that half the shares can't be sold for the first few years, which means that only half the shares are available to buy, which is what you want. This is what drives these good stocks up, is that most of the register's not active. And if you see starting to see what holdings are there. So there's a little secret there I've just given away. But yeah, some of the best performing stocks are generally held with a really high holding management, and because they can't trade them, it means there's less shares an issue, and which causes these shares to pop here. So that's what we want to look for as well. But I digress. So that's I think actually the last one on the list there I saw was Perseus Mining, which is actually a gold stock. So I think gold's been a little bit in and out of the list the last couple of weeks, but nice little pop there. Some of the golds, I think we mentioned some of the gold stocks look pretty interesting here the last couple of weeks. So yeah, definitely seeing a little bit of action in that space. So that's our quarterly. Looking at our daily stocks there, just saw a few sort of small ones move big here. So these are stocks we've got to put on our list now. These daily ones here. These are ones that I'll be looking at closely, because we've had a bit of a pop in some of these. So you want to sort of see, like look at this last move here. So you popped out of here, then you sort of this nice little tight congestion, and then a pop again, and then breaking up, and then a pullback, sit on top of the high. So it's hard to sort of buy when you see a pop like this. It's hard to follow a move like this. You want to wait for a pullback congestion there. So we just put that on a list. We wait for some sort of consolidation, wait for a VCP, wait for a little flag pennant, whatever we're looking for there. WA1 is a relatively new company there. Big volume there, had a big jump. So again, pretty hard to trade this one. We just put it on a list and we wait for some sort of consolidation. VUL, interesting, just because this is a leading sector at the moment, obviously that energy sector. So it's had a bit of a bounce here on some okay volume. Still hasn't broken above a swing high. So again, we just put this on our list, keep an eye on it. We want to sort of see some sort of consolidation there, but just because that is a leading sector, and the last bounce here is okay volume, we want to keep an eye on that. SYA is okay, not great. I think Weebit was on there. Obviously, it's had that big jump. Again, you want to see some consolidation. That one's a little riskier just because of its inherent nature of that's typically being an exhaustion. That Ordinate's had a bit of a jump, a nice move here. So again, we want to wait for some sort of consolidation, see if it gives us a chance. So sometimes people just see these sort of stocks jump and then these are exciting stocks, I want to be long, so people just go and buy them. But this you have to really manage your risk here. So you really need to look for, you're waiting for a period of consolidation, waiting for the price action to tighten up. You're waiting for a safe entry. So this whole trading emphasis is about risk reward. So if we can't get an entry with a low risk and a high reward, we shouldn't be taking the trade, regardless of our convictions or whether we think the stock's going higher or no. It's good traders look for good risk management. That's the most important thing. And then once you're long here, I was just telling Chris before we got on air this morning here, this has probably been the least active I've been. So I've sort of got long last week. I haven't done any trade. I think I've been stopped out on one smallest position in there. I'm 95% long. All I've been doing is managing my stops here now. So I've literally got, I think, 4 of my positions I've now got to break even. So I went from risking around 5% of my capital to currently risking less than 2.5%. And I'm in the hardest stage of trading now. I'm in the sitting part, which is the hardest part. Trust me, I've been trading for 20 years, and I've really only learnt this in the last couple. Is that if you're going to learn to sit, hold your positions, and let them run, that's where you make the big gains. So that's the trickiest part, is to manage your risk reward, manage your positions, and then just maybe stop here. So all I'm doing now, all I've done this week is review each of my trades, where my initial stop was, each unit of profit that I should be sort of moving. I should be sort of guiding myself up. But I look at the chart. I don't use a spreadsheet like I used to. I use where I think, it shouldn't go below this last swing low, or it shouldn't go below this level. So I just keep edging my stops higher. So I've sort of gone from having a risk of roughly 5% to only risking about 2% now, my capital. If it keeps going higher, I might get to break even. So so it's the sitting, that's the hardest part, but that's where the money's made. So if we can get to that level, that's what we want to get to. So again, I digress. A1G.
Good insights, though. Critical insights, but yeah, it's we'll definitely put those in, and like they're ones to come back on the rainy days and really cement that knowledge.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, it's just like you have to, this. Sometimes you've just got to, when you're sort of early in this game here, you just sort of, and I've, even someone who's in the market like, 15 years and stuff, I was still wanting to trade every day or every week, or, should I lighten knots some off? Shouldn't I, just build your process. What do we say this morning? I was reading I was talking to you, Chris, about the book, Atomic Habits. The
most successful people in the world. What do they have in common?
Yeah, they've mastered boredom. So basically,
it sounds silly, doesn't it?
I know. It's so basically sort of repetition is something. So if you want to perform at the highest level and create the greatest so basically you build your process, your discipline. So you do the same thing every day, same process. Follow your playbook. You only follow certain trades. You build a system and you follow it to a T, and it becomes boring. But it's a discipline that you have to sort of follow and build to the point where you love the boredom. And that's basically what the highest performers they learn to love the boredom, which is odd saying that, but that is so true. It's so true. So classic. I thought that was fantastic. I was hearing that this morning. I thought that's perfect. That is trading 101. This one's pretty interesting, actually. The African gold. So gold's on a bit of a move there. It's a pretty small stock, but all the volume there is pretty decent. So probably too small for me, but I probably will. I have added this to my list anyway, just to sort of keep an eye on it, see if we get some sort of consolidation. Costa was sort of one that's had a pretty mean downtrend, and then had a bit of a bounce, and then all of a sudden the talk of someone coming in and taking a strategic stake has got the stock sort of moving. So it might be one just to keep an eye on here. If we see some sort of consolidation later on, might be one to watch, just because there has been a bit of corporate activity. Gold Road, another gold stock here, had a pretty nice bounce here. So got a low in place here now. Now we've sort of got a higher low in place, and now we've got a second high low. So starting to build here some of these gold stocks. So I'm long a few golds. So yeah, I like what I'm seeing there. So early days here yet. They've definitely sort of done this before, got a good move, and then come back and hit me out at break even. But yeah, like what I'm seeing there so far. I think BGL was on the list. Again, nice, good volume off that low there, Chris. So last 4 weeks, last 4 or 5 days there, some good volume. I thought Linus was interesting just because that sector's been on fire here. Yet this stock sort of is lagging here quite a bit. So okay, volume the last 4 days, but yeah, I don't know what it means that in a stock in a sector which is firing, this one's lagging here. So
we saw that before with some gold stocks, false starts, and Newcrest was just not participating, was it?
No. So I don't know. So even though it doesn't look too bad here, I don't know if I'd be rushing following it just because it's such a laggard. But let's say, yeah, it's just interesting here. That's actually, turning up here very late here. I thought this one was pretty interesting, actually. Alumina there, AWC, just, again, one of the sort of metals which has probably been a bit like gold, been underwater a bit. But nice little bounce here off the lows here. So again, yeah, probably looking for some sort of, okay volume here, pretty heavy volume down the bottom here. So this is sort of almost exhaustive sort of style. So yeah, this is sort of how sort of trends can actually sort of, when we look at those sort of volumes at the end here, that sort of exhaustive style here and starting to move up here. So this is one to keep an eye on here. Actually, obviously the commodities is definitely a sector that's leading here, and until sort of until inflation starts to sort of ease, which at this stage it's not, we're hoping it'll ease, but we haven't seen any proof that, being quite the opposite actually. So that means definitely commodities should be, we should be watching here. So yeah, this is definitely one to sort of keep an eye on actually. So I'll be adding this alumina to my list there. I'll be waiting for a little bit of a consolidation there or something like that. Again, pretty small here. GBZ very small. Dicker Data was on the list there, which I thought that was interesting. But again, we've had a bit of a rally, declining volume there. Still haven't broken a swing high. You've been noticing there the Nasdaq's been probably underperforming the other indices a little bit so far. So still a little bit hesitant, that sector. So that probably, for me, that kind of rules that out a bit at this stage. I thought growth might have, bounced a bit more, but yeah, there's definitely a few more laggards in there. AX1 sort of interesting here. Just yeah, sort of actually one of my clients sort of brought this to my attention there. Sort of got a pretty good growth profile here, but just broken above a little swing high there in the last few days. Probably early days here, but probably just one to keep an eye on. And SCP is another classic, obviously sort of safe sort of stock here, but again, it's had a nice little deep low. Again, this is a property trust there with, I think Woolworths, and so basically some of the safest, sort of longest, sort of least. And yeah, it's had a bit of a bounce there, some pretty good volume through there. Pulled back on some pretty light volume, and then, popped up here again, and then came back in here, so a little VCP, and then popped through there. So definitely one of the stocks that I do look for actually at the bottom of bear markets. You sort of got your favorite sort of stocks that tend to sort of turn, just because I think this is generally a quality property trust if I was looking for property trust. So but yeah, it's come out of the gates here, some good volume there, but that's sort of it there really. So interesting list there. Obviously you've still got lots of lithium companies in there. Some of those are looking a little late stage, so you just got to be careful in there. Obviously the gold stocks are actually looking interesting. Some of the metals that have been less hot, so gold, aluminium there. I think even sort of coppers have a bit of a move here. So some of the oftentimes the commodities basket, not all the commodities run together. So I've historically always sort of looked at the one that's sort of out of favor, looking for that to sort of come good. So it kind of goes against a little bit of the momentum sort of trading there, but I just but I noticed that a few of those are sort of starting to spark up here. It's just some early signs here, but we are looking for some new leaders there. So we've had pharmaceuticals on the list there recently, sort of lithium stocks on the list. Obviously coal was on the list. It's funny, coal's come out of the list now. It's the first time I think coal stocks have been out of the list for
possibly months.
Yeah. So yeah, so it's probably just just the signs there. Probably some negative signs there, or some signs that sort of starting to lose some momentum there. But yeah, just pretty interesting. But I'd be sort of starting to look through some of the newer stocks here, and yeah, it's just interesting. We're sort of seeing that whole dynamic playing out in the States. It's just fascinating this week that some of those the biggest winners of yesteryear are the ones getting cooked here the last week or two. Yet the index is actually holding up relatively well. Yeah. So yeah, and it just means I think that's one stage there. I think in November last year, I think we were talking about. I think those top 4 or 5 stocks accounted for like something like 40-50% of the weighting in the S&P 500. So they got so big. So again, you've got the underbelly turning down, and then the last stocks doing the heavy lifting at the end, which is again classic sort of topping, sort of style.
Yeah, that breadth narrow.
Yeah. Now we've got the classic other sort of, we've reached the end of the sort of, I think we're near the end of the bear market here. So we're looking for the new leadership to emerge. So these old leaders generally don't become the new leaders. And that's basically what history tells us. What has happened exactly this week is that anyone trying to buy the old leaders, they're letting us down here. So we shouldn't be looking at those. So we're looking for new leadership group to emerge here. So yeah, just fascinating stuff. It's everything we learn about markets. It's all playing out in front of us. So hope you got something out of that today.
There are some really good insights, great chestnuts there, trading, as you said, trading 101. And it's probably a good point to say that on the right-hand side, we've got the trading strategies and insights like that we've built down into snippets, and also more in-depth tutorials like the strategies where Gary's talking about VCPs and the like. And then also when he's talking about being fully invested, he goes through his trades on a Tuesday, which is that playlist just also there on the right. So to that point, we should thank Gary Glover from Novus Capital for another really helpful week of insights. Thank you, Gary.
Thanks, Chris.